Hey, this is Shane Smith with Genesis Offroad. In this video, I'm going to be showing you step-by-step how to install our dual battery kit in the 5th gen Toyota 4Runner. Okay, before we get into it, let me show you what comes with the kit. You're going to get our new steel battery tray that's going to hold 2 batteries side by side. You're also going to get the Gen 3 power hub. This has the smart battery combiner, the boost button for linking your batteries together, G-screen port, and the bus bars for connecting your accessories. And you're going to get the little hardware baggie that has everything that you need to get it installed. Now you're also going to need a couple of Group 25 size batteries. Let me show you a couple options that we offer here. So we have the Odyssey and the Full Throttle brand batteries, and of course these are dummy shells. You're gonna need a couple of Group 25 size batteries to fit into our tray. That's because since our system keeps the 2 batteries side by side, when you drop the batteries in here, and then the power hub is gonna sit on top of the batteries to hold them down, and then all the wires are just gonna line right up with your battery post and keep your wiring nice and simple. So we like to keep the batteries side by side in the stock battery location. Now there's some other kits on the market that'll let you put the second battery over here on the passenger side in the corner. We just prefer to keep them right here together so all the wiring is nice and simple. You're not having to run wires over to the other side. Also leaves that spot over there for installing some other accessories, maybe an S-Pod or an air compressor. So space is limited, so we like to use that space for something else. Okay, now we're under the hood of the 4Runner. Let's just take a look at what we're working with. So we're gonna be pulling out the stock battery, and in order to fit 2 batteries side by side right here, you know, it looks like Toyota left us a lot of room here, but once we start putting 2 batteries in there, the space is gonna fill up pretty quickly. So we're gonna be moving the factory fuse box backwards just about 1 inch with some little relocation brackets, and we'll show you how to do that. But let's just get started by pulling out the stock battery. So we're gonna disconnect these post clamps. We're gonna grab a 10mm and we're gonna just disconnect our battery clamps. We'll start with the negative and then the positive. Okay, this 4Runner has a winch on the front bumper, so we're gonna remove the winch cables from the post clamps and we'll reattach those to our bus bars later. Okay, we'll set our clamps out of the way. Then we're going to remove this factory bracket with a 10mm. And let's pull the battery out. Okay, with the battery out of the way, now we're going to move the fuse box back a little bit using the little relocation tabs in our hardware bag. So you grab these little brackets right here, and we're going to remove 3 10mm bolts that are holding the fuse box in place. One on the fender and one behind the fuse box. Okay, save these. We're gonna reuse those in a minute. Okay, now with the fuse box loose, we're gonna wiggle it backwards towards the brakes a little bit, and you'll notice pretty quickly that the factory wire harness going into the fuse box is kind of holding it from going back. So there's a couple of little wire clips down in here. We're gonna pop those loose so we can get some slack on the factory wiring to help move the fuse box back a little. Now I'm gonna use a little pry tool to help remove some of those little wire clips. Okay, so to install these little relocation brackets, you can see that this is gonna move the mounting hole back about 1 inch. So we're gonna reuse the factory bolt into this hole, and then our new bolt that comes in the hardware baggie will be used to secure the fuse box down. So this one is gonna go right back here behind the fuse box. We're gonna push this forward as much as we can, put this down here, and put the bolt through it into the stock hole location. Okay, the second relocation bracket is gonna go against the fender. So we're gonna move the fuse box back a little bit out of our way, and we'll tighten that down with a 10mm. Okay, now we'll get the fuse box into position. We'll push it back until we can get the new bolt into the bracket. Get the hole lined up with the new bracket and start your 10mm bolt. And just get that one started, and then we'll come and put the bolt onto the bracket on the back side too. Okay, with both of those started, we're just gonna kind of shimmy the fuse box around so it sits nice and straight. And then we'll tighten the new bolts down with a 10mm. Okay, so the leg on the front of the fuse box, we're not gonna put a relocation bracket in that one because the tray has to sit so low, the head of the bolt would be sticking into the bottom of the tray. So the front of the fuse box is just gonna be hanging out there. Okay, let's take care of moving a few more little things out of the way before we get our battery tray in here. First, we're gonna move this factory ground wire out of our way just a little bit. So we're gonna loosen this with a 10mm and just rotate that out of the way. Okay, we're just gonna rotate this wire up like this and tighten it back down. That's gonna make it easier to clear the battery tray later. Okay, the next one we're gonna move, there's a bracket that holds the factory harness that goes up to your factory positive post clamp. And we need to get a little bit more slack on this wire here to come up top of the new battery post. So we're gonna disconnect this clamp from the side of the sheet metal down here. Okay, so we're just gonna disconnect this clamp and we'll just put the bolt back in that hole. Now let's just kind of clean out the factory battery mount shelf down here because we're gonna use a Sharpie to mark our hole locations in just a second. So we're just gonna clean this up a little bit. Okay, if your 4Runner has this little white retaining clip for the factory battery tie down, we're just gonna remove this and get this out of our way. Okay, when our battery tray sits down in here, we're gonna be bumping into that factory battery tie down bracket. So we're just gonna bend this down out of our way. Okay, that's all of our prep work. Now we're gonna set our battery tray down in here and we're gonna mark our hole locations. So take your new tray, the line head facing towards the engine, move our wires out of the way a little bit. Let's just set the tray down in here. Move some hoses out of the way. First, you can see that the wire harness going into the fuse box is really close to this corner. So we just need to kind of shove this out of the way as much as possible. Also in the front corner, you'll notice this is part of the air conditioning hose is really close to the front corner of the battery tray. So I'm gonna pull the tray out and kind of gently bend this hose back towards the radiator just a little bit. If you kind of grab a hold of this, you can gently move this towards the radiator. It doesn't take much, but you can see it's already flexible. We just want to kind of gently bend this. And then we'll put the tray back in here and see how that looks. Okay, that looks a little better. Now you can tell that it's a little bit further away from the corner of my tray. Okay, now we're ready to test fit our batteries down in here, and we're gonna do one battery at a time and adjust the tray into a good position. All right, we're gonna set our accessory battery in here first, and we wanna slide it all the way to the fender. And I can see right away that's gonna be bumping up against the wire harness for the fuse box. So we're just gonna adjust the tray. We're gonna slide the tray this way so the battery can go this way. So move the tray where you need to in order to clear the headlights and the fuse box. And we can set the second battery down in here, and you'll notice that we're a little bit under the engine cover. So if you want to pop this engine cover to get out of your way, that's fine. Also this little radiator cover, you might just pull this back a little bit to get your second battery in there. Okay, now we got our two batteries in here. Now we want to just double check, make sure we're not bumping the headlights, check our wire harness, make sure nothing's getting pinched. Okay, with everything fitting in here now, we need to pull the batteries back out, but we want to make sure the tray doesn't move because we need to mark the holes down low to drill for our mounting points. So I'm going to use a little marker and just kind of make me a little guide right here off the side of my tray and show how that kind of comes right over to the radiator. And on my 4Runner, the corner of my battery is right up against the corner of this radiator cover. So I want to pull the batteries out real carefully so that the tray doesn't move. Now before we move this battery, let's just take a look down in here and check the mounting legs. So if the mounting hole in the leg of the tray is not sitting on flat sheet metal, that's okay. Just go ahead and pull your battery back out. Do a little bit more adjustments, take your time with it, get it moved back towards the fender a little bit. and then we'll mark and drill our holes. Okay, so now you can see the factory sheet metal under the holes in the tray legs. So before we move the accessory battery, I'm gonna go ahead and mark these 2 holes. And then we'll pull out the accessory battery, and now we'll mark the other 2 hole locations. Okay, now we got the holes marked in the legs. Now we can pull the tray out and drill our holes. So we're gonna need a 25/64 inch drill bit. Now, if you don't have a 25/64 drill bit, just pause the video here right now, run to the hardware store. It's important that you get the right size because we want this to fit the nutsert perfectly. The little flange head on this is not very wide, so you make sure you get the right size drill bit. So we're just gonna use a center punch to mark our holes and then drill those out. Okay, now we'll just touch up our holes with a little bit of touch-up paint. Okay, now we'll grab the nutserts out of the hardware bag, and we're gonna drop these in the holes. Okay, so in your hardware baggie, you're gonna have a grade 8 bolt, a small washer, and an oversized flange nut. And those are gonna go together in this order. So we're gonna hold the nut still with a wrench and tighten the bolt onto the nutsert. And when we do that, when we tighten the bolt down, it's gonna compress the nutsert. So you can see how tall that is originally. And then when we tighten the bolt down, it will compress it and flare out. And the bottom side of that is gonna grip the bottom side of our sheet metal. Because if you don't get it installed exactly right, it may look like this one. So here you can see a nutsert that was installed improperly and it's all deformed. We want to make sure it's nice and smooth, compressed to hold the tray in there nice and secure. All right, let's thread our bolt down into the first nutsert. We'll just get the thread started. Then we're going to hold our 1/2 inch wrench on that nut to hold it still. Get that in place. Then we'll thread it on down. Then we'll use a 7/16 ratchet to tighten the bolt. All right, got that one. Okay, we got all the nutserts in. I know that's a little bit of a bear to get those things installed, but now that that's done, we're past the hard part. So now we're gonna drop the tray in, bolt it down, and everything will start coming together. All right, let's drop our tray back in, get it lined up with the nutserts. This is my winch cable. I'm gonna move my winch cable over here so it's a little bit easier to get to later. All right, now we'll use the bolts and the large washers from the hardware baggie to secure the tray down. Okay, now the tray does have a little bit of adjustability with the oversized holes in the legs. So we'll get the tray in here in a pretty good position and we'll go ahead and tighten those bolts down. Okay, let's drop in our accessory battery. And you can probably tell if the if the battery is not perfectly centered on the tray, you might need to loosen up the bolts and wiggle the tray just a little bit. Now we'll slide back over. Now we're looking good. We'll drop in the cranking battery. Okay, now we're ready to put the lid on top, but if you have any other accessory wires, just go ahead and make sure you got those routed towards this side. So now we're ready to set the power hub on top. All right, so the power hub is gonna sit on here with the line head facing forward and the bus bars towards the fender. We'll just get this lined up and let's go ahead and tighten this down before we start hooking up our wires. So we use these 4 bolts that come in the hardware baggie and we'll tighten these down with a 1/2 inch. Okay, now let's start hooking up our post clamps. We're gonna start with our factory positive over here. You should be able to lift this clamp up and over your battery post. If yours doesn't look exactly like this, that's okay. So some of the late model 5th gen 4Runners have a different style post clamp. Now on the newer models, you may need to get a longer bolt that comes up through the bottom of that post clamp around the little fuse holder built in there. But if you take a close look at it, it should be pretty obvious what you need to do to get this wire secured onto the clamp. Now let's make sure we get this clamp all the way down to the bottom of our post. I'm gonna loosen this up a little bit more. I'm gonna loosen my clamp and then tap it, make sure it's seated all the way down to the bottom of our battery post. And then tighten that up with a 10mm. And then we'll tighten this one with a 12mm. And now the accessory battery positive we'll put on right here. There we go. And we'll tighten this clamp with a 1/2" wrench. Okay, then our factory negative clamp over here, we'll kind of get this in position. This has a little adjustable clamp on here, so you may need to kind of move this wire around a little bit like this and tighten that one with a 10mm. Then we'll take this nut off the back of the clamp and attach our wire and tighten that down with a 12mm. And last one is the cranking battery negative over here. Move this cover up a little bit. And again, we want this clamp seated and tighten that up with a 1/2". Okay, so last thing, if you want to bring this little factory post clamp cover back up, you can use a razor blade and just notch the side of this to clear our new wire coming off the side here. But I'm just gonna leave this off for right now. We're gonna put our engine cover back in place. And we're gonna check all of our clearances. I can see that my AC hose down here is not touching the tray. I've got plenty of room around my oil fill cap to get the oil fill cap off, and that's not touching the batteries. I've got plenty of room up here in the corner. Now you'll notice our tray kind of hangs over the factory fuse box lid by just a little bit, but you can still get in there. If you need to do any maintenance inside of the factory fuse box, you can still get in there. Okay, so that's really all there is to installing our dual battery kit. We're pretty much done. We're gonna check all of our clamps here, make sure everything is nice and tight, but that's all there is to installing the dual battery kit. Now, if you've got some accessories, let me show you a couple of things. We've got our winch cable over here. So I'm gonna bring my winch cable and the ground up, and I'm gonna pop the cover of the little bus bar cover here, and I'm gonna route my accessory cables to these studs. There's 3 different size studs on the bus bars, so you can use any one of those that your heavy gauge lugs will fit onto. So this is where you'll hook up all of your accessories. So anything that you wire up here will run from your accessory battery and won't drain down your cranking battery, right? Because that's the whole point of our system, right? We wanna make sure you can always start the engine. So once you get your accessory wires routed in here nice and neat, take your time with that, make it look nice, snap the cover back down, and we're all done. Hey, I hope that video helped you out. If it was helpful to you, please hit the subscribe button and like this video. That really does help us out. If you have any questions, please leave us a comment in the comment section down below or send us an email. And remember, it all starts with power.